after our calls. Perfecto. Amazing. And then team, we're literally in the Black Friday, Cyber Monday, like guts of it more than anything, right? How's it been going, Nicole, on your end? Has it been a good time in comparison to the previous like years you've been going through this?
Yeah, this is not my first rodeo. This is probably, I think, my 5th or 6th Black Friday, Cyber Monday. And I feel like each time it gets a little bit more smooth. Oh, it's always chaotic. It's just the time of year. Everyone's just scrambling to get things out. So
yeah, when it starts to build up like that, I think like on my end, I always say, hey, there's some stuff from Q2 that I didn't do yet, but it's okay. I've done all the mandatory stuff, but there's definitely some stuff from Q2 that I wish that I was able to get to more than anything. But Sarah, how's your Black Friday, Cyber Monday, or Black Friday or Q4 time been going?
This one's been really fun. And I think it's because we've kind of migrated into this brand new like era for our agency and just for the industry as a whole. So I'm feeling a lot better. I'm feeling a little bit more organized this year than I was last year. Last year, I felt like it was just scrambled to get as many ads as you possibly can. This year, we had a whole lot better of a system for actually creating those for our brands. So yeah, I'm feeling confident. I don't know if that's going to continue. It depends on how this Black Friday goes. But no, I mean, having a system has really helped a lot just to like decrease the stress in general.
Entirely. And then Lauren, I know the content production, like when you're starting to make some stuff, there's a ton of stuff going on, but how's it been working with your clients in particular and some of the stuff that they are asking you for?
Well, I'm glad everyone else is great.
Oh,
no, I'm just kidding. No, it's good. It's good. I mean, every year trying to get better, which is, organizing and prioritizing things. So I always make calendars and try to get things available on time, but there's always going to be a change. So it's been good, but it's crazy on the production side. I feel like once we get to Black Friday, it's just hectic. And then after we kind of slow down a little bit.
Entirely. Okay, I'm excited to kick off with everybody here. So without further ado, I'm going to share my screen and we can get into some things together. And first and foremost, everybody who's in the party, I'm excited that like at Motion, we get to host so many people we respect immensely. And what we're going to help really talk through today is like the creative strategy element on our end. But before I get into like all of the AMA stuff, all of the questions that I'm excited to hear from the team, I just wanted to cover a couple housekeeping items first and foremost. So as everyone knows who has been to our AMAs before or potentially not, all of the questions aren't actually done through this Zoom chat. Where we like to manage them is within Slido. So I'll throw that into our chat here. And through this link, you can throw in your questions. You can upvote if there's something that someone likes so that we can actually prioritize those questions that start to come in. And then the other thing that I like to note is ultimately like these are being recorded, like I had mentioned earlier. So whoever needs it, we want to spread the wealth and we really want to make sure that everyone has this educational material that they ultimately need. Amazing. Okay. So with all of that being said, I'm super lucky to get to sit here today with Lauren, Nicole, and Sarah. I've known all of them for quite some time. They're absolutely incredible in everything that they do. And I'm excited, so excited for everyone here to get the insights that they need. And one of the biggest pieces that we're going to learn more about is that they've actually gone ahead and started like the world's first creative strategy agency. Now, at Motion, we love that and that's music to our ears, but everybody else, you're really going to learn today, like why that's such an important step towards not only just like creative strategy as a community, but more importantly, your bottom line, right? Like we're looking at the macro environment and everything that's going on. We need to be efficient. And ultimately this creative strategy element is going to help you become more efficient over time. So that's my spiel more than anything. And eventually, I promise we're going to get into these lovely questions that everybody has here. But before we get into those, I just wanted to start with a couple like introductory questions more than anything. So first one I'm going to direct is actually to Nicole. On this topic of creative strategy, we've been doing it whether it's defined or not. It's been something that's been around, but now more than ever, why is it so important?
Oh, this is a loaded question. I mean, creative strategy has always been important. You have to keep in mind, like our consumers or our potential customers, they're getting bombarded every single day with ads left and right, all over social media, all over their phones, on billboards, etc. So creative strategy has always been important to make sure that your brand stands out from the rest. And you want to make sure that you're doing this because you don't have budget or bandwidth, your teams don't have the money to waste or the time to waste. So creative strategy is a great way for cutting through the noise and really getting to your target audience that you're trying to get to. Why now, I think, is the big question. Why it's kind of all over social media right now, and you're hearing about this new role, the creative strategist. I think it really, iOS 14 put some gas to this fire, where we lost a lot of attribution. We lost a lot of data that we're relying on previously for targeting. So it's getting more and more challenging to actually reach your consumers. So it's just even more relevant now to get back to the basics, get back to the research, get back to understanding your audience and who these people really are. Because at the end of the day, you're talking to creative, you're talking to a real person like across from the screen. So I think that's why creative strategy is important now and why we're seeing it blow up.
I
Today,
love that.
like, in particular.
I love that. Humans first at the end of the day, and then how do we also scale it with the bottom line needs of the company? We make it work. And then again, I still wanted to set the stage for everybody, but people come to these AMAs to learn really about those tactics and how do we get the actual job that needs to be done. But before we get in there, I almost wanted to look at this through a different lens. All three of you work with so many great companies on a day-to-day basis, right? And a big part of this is like, who's actually doing the work at the end of the day. So what I wanted to jump into a little bit was actually some team structure stuff. Like, what are those personalities? What are those roles we start to need to fill outside of solely just the creative strategist? And we'll loop them in, of course, at the end there. So Lauren, you bring that unique perspective of a unicorn status, being from the design end and being able to understand everything that's going on, right? So talk to us a little bit about some of like the myths of some of these roles that exist, what those roles are and what you believe they should be doing. Would that be cool?
Yeah, for sure. So again, kind of that unicorn status, I think. I mean, I heavily come from a creative background side. So, you know, a lot of people, when they say they're going to hire a graphic designer, they think the graphic designer is literally going to do everything. They're going to be the copywriter, the designer, the video editor, everything, which in reality, that's not true. You have to have one role for each. They all play different parts within the ecosystem. And so making sure that you have each person on that team is a huge benefit and is not only going to help the side of the design, but it's also going to help the side of the creative strategist. And then obviously, you know, your media buyer, and everything else that kind of ties into that. But I think those are kind of the roles as far as the creative side goes, that you need to make sure that you're fulfilling all three of those areas, because one person cannot do everything. So don't expect them to.
Yeah. Incredible. And then on the other side of things, Nicole, like when we talk about the translation layer of like creative strategist as a role, as well as media buyers, what are some of those like personality traits people need to succeed?
Yeah, absolutely. I think too, similar to the graphic designer being siloed in their role, the media buyer's role is kind of changing and shifting as well, where the media buyers oftentimes are being sent out and go run these ads, and they're so data and analytical focused that they're in the weeds, and they could tell you exactly what, like the thumbs up ratio, the click-through rates, the CPCs. But how does that actually translate into your creatives? So that's where you have to have that dual lens. You have to be able to read the data and make decisions on the fly and iterate off that data. But you also have to have that creative lens to know, how do you actually execute this ad? What actual elements in the ad need to be tweaked so that we can continue to see success and scale ultimately.
I love it. And then now if I go back to sharing my screen, Sarah actually put out a tweet yesterday that I absolutely love, everybody. And if you haven't seen it, go check it out. But it's just like this idea of what that's like the process and steps in the creative strategy process starts to look like, right? And when I see this, it makes it really digestible, that's for sure. But I think one of the big things that stands out to me is like there's so many things to do within creative strategy at the end of the day. There's these tasks that everyone can see here, plus the management of those roles that we've just talked about with Lauren and Nicole. But then Sarah, now that you've been able to see a lot of this, how is like the creative strategy agency that you all are putting forward really help play into this and tie it all together?
Yeah, so one of the most interesting things about this is it was actually created kind of from something that Nicole had before, where she was kind of just working on what exactly is going into a creative strategy, because we can throw this word around a lot. We need a creative strategist. We should have a strategy. Who's going to do the creative strategy? But unless you know what it actually is, it's very difficult, I think, for people to wrap their minds around what the heck we're supposed to be looking for when we go to hire somebody or a team of people to actually produce this for us. So when we talk about the strategy itself from the agency side, all of these things have to be included. Otherwise, we're basically just guessing on our ads. So we have to start with that alignment. What the heck are we doing? Where are we going? What KPIs are we trying to hit? What are the goals that we're actually reaching for? Then we go into that research phase. And on the agency side, this is kind of how we wrap in our NLP reports. So we actually take a whole bunch of comments and reviews down. And if we can't find those, we'll go to Reddit, Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, wherever we can get them, where people are talking about not only just your product, but the actual industry itself. So any of the problems that they're facing, anything that they're actually struggling with. We'll go through and categorize them into 9 different emotional categories so we can figure out, what do these people actually feel about their problem and how did they get to this point of like, I need a solution. That research also encompasses things like who's involved in the purchasing process. Is it their mom? Is it their sister, their dads, their coworkers? Who's involved in that? And then we'll also go deep into actual language use, which is one of the best places, I think, to find good ad copy and good ad angles. So once we've done that entire research, we now have like this giant list of all these different things we can test. And that's what the research is for. So your entire strategy is based upon this huge piece of research that's basically coming up with an entire list of things so that you'll never run out of things to test. That's the most important part about research. We should never be running out of things to test if we do the research correctly. After that, then we'll go into creating actual avatars around that research. We'll go into the ideation phase, which is usually the fun part for us because we get to go in and actually pin things and do an ideation board. We'll go in and kind of get inspiration from not only what other brands in the industry are doing, but we'll actually take that information and use it for our new ideation on ads on our side. Then we go into the actual creation process, which is briefing, content production, launching the ads, doing the analysis. That's the part that I think most people are doing currently, is the middle, the actual middle chunk. So briefing, content production, launch, and creative analysis. Everybody's currently doing that because that's what we were doing pre-iOS. After iOS happened though, we forgot about this like 4-step process in the beginning and the actual iteration of the organization afterwards. So the top and the middle, like the top and the bottom pieces are what's missing currently. So for any of those brands that are currently doing all 4 in the middle, great, keep it up, keep doing it. But if you're missing any of the 4 steps before or the 2 steps afterwards, that's where hiring an agency or a creative strategist can really push you into a totally new era for your brand and for paid advertising.
I love it. I love it. I love the fact that, like, honestly, like giving people kudos where they are, because it's like, you're doing great things at the end of the day. This is just how you take it to the next level, right?
Yeah.
So I really like how you've been able to spell it out. And where that now takes me to are kicking off our Q&A from the audience here. And everybody, as you know, the link is in the chat. Feel free to throw your questions into Slido from here. But something that drew my eye to it is initially just speaking about like alignment, research, all of those different steps. Now, there's 2 things at play. There's speed, because we have Q4 here, but there's also preparation for making sure we're set in Q1 and can take off where we need. So throughout this entire process, and I'm going to throw this one at Nicole first, is how do you manage the feedback process with internal stakeholders, a client, and everyone else in between to make sure that they feel heard, but you're not developing creative by committee at the end of the day?
Oh, yeah, this one's tough. There's so many different key players that have an input, from the media buyer to the copywriter, the graphic designer, and then even the brand team. You have to manage a lot of personalities, which takes some, zhuzhing. But how do I, sorry, what was the question?
Manage that feedback process. So even whether in your world, when we're talking about like an initial creative, and then making sure you feel good about it, but now you need to make sure everyone feels good about it at the end of the day. So how do we make sure? Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No, I think, yeah, it all comes down to the research and the alignment. If once your teams are aligned, I think this whole process, this question almost gets eliminated, this problem, because you're aligned and you have the same goals. And then once you've done the research properly, you really could just go back to it and keep building off of the research from prior.
Love it. And then Sarah, on your end, like when when that research and those initial reports are created, is that something you're like immediately going to the client with to be like, listen, this is how we view the world. Are you cool with that? Or what does that conversation look like?
Yeah. So usually when we onboard clients, we usually start with any sort of kickoff call. So this starts with like, what is your brand? We usually send out a form where you can kind of align yourself with, here's all of our assets, here's any of our creatives, this is what we're running currently, this is where we're actually sitting in our ecosystem. And then we'll go through and actually do the research for you from that NLP standpoint. And from there, the NLP really just helps us identify not just the language, but what your customers actually think about their problems and about your product. So all of our creative strategy is built upon what your people are saying in real time. So we take this to the brands from the very start, very beginning, and they share it internally throughout all kinds of different departments. So the nice part about the research that we are doing is you can take it not just into paid, but you can take it to your actual product production team. You can take it to your fulfillment center. You can take it to your customer service. You can take it to basically anywhere and use this as a benchmark of like, this is what our people actually think about us and about what we do and about the industry, about their problems, so that everyone has the same information. So to Nicole's point, the only way to kind of like, I guess, negate those kind of head-to-head arguments or like discussions that you have internally between the teams is to be on the same page from the beginning. If everyone has the same information, it's very difficult for miscommunication to happen. So we try really hard as the actual creative strategy agency to make sure that we are communicating as well as we possibly can from the beginning.
Got you. Okay. And then a follow-up question for you, Sarah, that I see on here, and I'd have to find it. It's related to emotional models. So one of the big things, where's Maslow's? There we are. So one of the big things that comes up is for emotional models and coming up with different angles, Maslow's hierarchy, 10 reasons why, all that kind of stuff. And you're doing that research to then lead into something like this. Is there a specific version that you lean into the most?
Yeah, I love Maslow's hierarchy just because it gives you a good basis of just how humans work. So if you don't know Maslow's, it's basically a hierarchy that spells out like what humans need to survive. And at the basis, it's usually things like I need a house, I need clothes, those type of things. And it'll go all the way up to like, I need emotional security, I need love, I need acceptance, those type of things. And there's like a ton of different psychology, I guess, models that you could use to help categorize these things. You can use any model you want. I personally believe that you should use one that helps you message correctly. So the one that I use is based upon a whole bunch of different kind of pieced together ones, but mostly based upon a good friend, Will Leach. So he's a data market, like a big researcher. He does this for like Pepsi and like some of the bigger brands. But he wrote a book called Marketing to Mind State, which just like blew my mind this year, because he was able to take all of these different models of psychology and squish them into one, where he has these different categorizations that basically set apart what your consumers are feeling from an actual emotional need. So if you haven't read that book, I would suggest go read that book because that's kind of what like we've based the majority of our NLP report off of. We've tweaked it so that it's specific to paid. So what Will does is for like broad, large scale brands. Ours is specific for just paid advertising. And it's so far it's working extremely well. So that's my suggestion.
I love it. I love it. And I think like Lauren, to loop you in here, it's also tied into this question that I saw. It's like when starting to develop an actual asset, like where do you even start? So of course there's research involved. On your end, how do you take that initial research and then determine what to actually do with that? What does it look like? How do you make sure it resonates, it looks good, and all of that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just taking all the research, making sure everyone's aligned, and really building out that solid creative brief that's going to basically execute all of the research, the ideas, all of the input from all the stakeholders to make sure that you're delivering briefs that are going to be aligned with what the actual research is. And then once you kind of have those briefs, then making sure that you have the content that's going to support the briefs that you're actually going to be working on. So it's like not only just making sure you do the research, but there's so many other factors, especially on the production and the creative side. It's like if you don't have that content, then you technically can't necessarily execute on the research. So I think it's just aligning first on what the overall thing that you want to accomplish is, and then taking that and kind of trickling it down to all assets of, the organization.
That's amazing. And then one follow-up for you, and I'm also going to throw it to Nicole after, is in that brief, do you have pieces that you consider to be like mandatory, always include, whereas some are optional, where it's like that might take it to the next level?
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to have the brief that's going to first execute, and then you kind of have to see where that goes as far as testing, and then where could that potentially go in an iteration. So it's like, I think you have that first initial idea of this is when I want to actually test and really drive to see if this is going to be that result. And then kind of have that secondary element of, okay, well, we kind of know where we want this to go, but now we can kind of take this concept and iterate on it. So I think as you're kind of building those briefs, you always want to make sure that you're going to have that area to slide into so that you could basically start to iterate on it. Like if you've done the research, you already kind of know where it's going to go, but you can kind of take those learnings and really, drive it home with that solid iteration.
Got you. Okay. And then Nicole, in your world, you share a similar sentiment or any other context to add on like mandatory inclusions into a brief versus like potentially optional, where it's going to take it to the next level?
Absolutely. My background's in media buying, so I know I don't have as strong as of a content production background, but I've had to write a lot of briefs. What I like to lean into is an inspiration idea, because it's very challenging to write out word for word every single detail of a brief. It would take you honestly an hour just for one brief to write out all the details. Okay, move this tiny circle here, add this badge here, and text font this size. It's ridiculous. So what I like to do is I like to grab an inspiration piece. I have a bunch of inspiration boards. I use Foreplay, I use AdBox. Before that though, I even just screenshot a ton of ads using ad spy tools and just collected them in a Google Drive folder, and I called that my swipe folder. It's kind of like my little inspo spot. So usually I like to pull an example or a couple examples because I don't want to steal someone's idea. I don't want to copyright anyone, but I want to grab inspiration in little bits from all these different industries. And some of my best pieces are actually from completely different industries, not even related, but the format, the design layouts were really strong. So I take that and then apply it to this particular niche. For the brief itself, some key things, naming convention is very, very important when it comes to almost all phases of your creative strategy, but especially when it comes to the media buying aspect. I like to make the naming convention in the brief so that the graphic designer, they save all the files under the correct name and it's all the same throughout. So it just makes it down the road much more smooth. The file type, not as important. Some things like dimension, aspect ratios per the unique platform are super important. If you're running like static images, 1x1s are very key. Aspect ratio wise, you don't want to run a lot of 4x5s because it gets cropped when actually running the ad position. So being very mindful of the specific sizes per platform. And then for most briefs, I like to shoot a Loom video and just video record my thoughts and what I'm going through. I'll have some bullets, but going through, especially if it's video content or something I want to mimic, I'll play through and show, and then I can highlight and point and talk over what I like, what I don't like, and the psychology behind it, which adds a lot more context to your graphic designer, and they seem to appreciate that. So I know there's a long-winded answer, but there's a lot of pieces that come together to build a successful brief. For sure.
You've chosen so many different buckets to translate what you need, right? And like, even if one doesn't hit, there's another way for someone to be able to interpret it. So that's so perfect. And then just for everyone to know, if you're not following Nicole on Twitter, please hit her on Twitter. I'll drop her info in there after. But that swipe folder she had spoken about, she's working on like a BFCM one specifically right now. I know she's giving people access to, so be sure to hit her up. And then Nicole, follow-up question for you. One of the questions in here, it says, what are good resources for ad creative ideas apart from just ad library? So I think there's two parts in here. There's like outside of ad library, which is the easiest one, but then also just like repeating your tech stack for people when you're talking about like Addison/Foreplay and that kind of stuff. Cool?
Yeah, I love ad libraries, but one of the main setbacks that a lot of people aren't thinking about is you're limited to what you already know about your competitors. So you're limited to the list of competitors that you already have. What I find is oftentimes when I do ad spying using ad spy tools, I think it's called like Facebook ad spy, quite literally, or ad beats or some of these other spy tools, is you're able to find competitors you weren't even aware about. So sometimes they can be very small competitors, sometimes very large. And what that allows you to do is actually grab a lot more ads that weren't even on your radar. Also, I find a lot of brands will run their more polished, more branded type content. This comes back to alignment, brand versus performance. Their branded content is on their branded fan page. So when you search in Facebook ad library for, I don't know, Dr. Squash, you're only going to see their branded, polished content that they want you to associate with the brand. When you use a spy tool, you're going to find all the hidden fan pages, all the white listing pages with influencers. You're going to find all the like mommy loves wine type little fan pages where they're dedicated pages for, they have a bunch of ad placements. And that's all going to come up, and you're going to find all the very heavy performance oriented ads. So a lot of brands aren't even aware of this. They're like, oh, they run all this polished stuff, we need to as well. Well, on the other hand, they have all this really heavy performance oriented D2C ads that they're also running, but they're on these hidden fan pages, so you don't know about it. So it's almost skewed. I find a lot of brands come in and they have the skewed idea of what type of ads we should run. You really need to run both in order to be successful in today's environment. So I really love spy tools first, and then shifting over to ad libraries once you've identified all your competitors.
Fantastic. And then Sarah, sorry, I was gonna push it to the research side of things, because let's take this same inspiration to the next level, right? Like Sarah, you had mentioned using Reddit, other platforms, and all that kind of stuff. So is there like a laundry list that you can almost provide people when you are conducting like your research reports?
Yeah, 100%. So easiest way obviously is to start with what you already have. If you're a brand that's been around for a while, best place to go is obviously your comments and reviews. Reviews are a little bit tough, just so that you know. Depending on the brand, they can either be very positively weighted or very negatively weighted. So you have to keep that in mind when you're actually doing any sort of like review analysis. If they are positive, that's great, but sometimes people will like overflower what they're saying. They'll just make it super positive because they really want, I don't know, the brand to like what they say, or they want other people to like what they say. So just keep that in mind, that sometimes they're a little bit weighted. But outside of your comments and reviews, second best place, I think, is surveys. Anytime that you can have actual personalized data coming in is fantastic. If you have none of those, if you're a new brand that you're like, I don't have comments, I haven't done surveys, like we're just brand new at this, best place to go, I think, is Reddit. That's probably my third place to go. Mostly because Reddit, people get very emotional. They're very like open with how they feel about their problems. And you'll get just threads on threads, just like so many people either agreeing or disagreeing and giving you kind of good discussion as to how they feel about whatever topic they've chosen to comment on. So Reddit is one of the best places to go. I also think Reddit categorizes things really, really well. So you can get really nitty gritty into your search. It's not just like broad topic. How do you feel about like sourdough bread? You can get down into like, what's the best pot to like bake sourdough bread in an electric oven? Like that's how detailed they get on Reddit. It's nuts. After Reddit, I'll usually go to TikTok, mostly because TikTokers are also very emotional. I don't know why, but their comments get real fiery. And then from there, I'm going to branch out and do Google Trend searches, Pinterest trend searches. I'll go into and actually do like ad comment searches if we can get it from the brands. That's kind of like secondary to those top ones. But yeah, as long as you can get personalized ones first, I think that's best. And then go to the places where people are most emotional with their comments.
Love that. And then Lauren, we've heard a ton from Nicole and Sarah on all fronts, right? Is there any final thoughts that you might have on there?
No, I literally have nothing else.
Perfect.
I have one more ad.
Hit us, Nicole.
It's so unconventional. It's not a lot of people, especially if you're in a media buyer position or a creative strategy, you don't really have the authority necessarily to do this. But anytime you can sit down with an actual consumer and pick their brain, actually interview.
Yeah, that's huge.
Super important. Get on the phone with your customers, especially as the brand owner. People love to hear from the founder, like, hey, I'm the founder from XYZ brand, wanted to talk to you about da 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 da. I feel like a lot of founders, it's a huge missed opportunity to do that, really learn about their customers. And you're a little hesitant, or if you're on the fence about it, start with your top 1 to 5% of your customers, your biggest fans. These are your biggest purchasers, your largest AOVs, your largest LTVs. They are stoked and excited that the founder of X brand called me to learn more about why I'm interested in the product. And they'll have tons of feedback too, tons of intricate details about why they purchased the product, what they're using it for, and sometimes it may be surprising for you to learn. So highly recommend that, though it's very underutilized, it seems.
Speaks really nicely to like the human element that we started this conversation with. So thanks for like hitting everyone with that mic drop on that one. That's perfect. That's so perfect. And then a lot of this information at the top, so when we're conducting our research, starts to make its way down to what the actual output becomes, right? And then when we're talking about the output, one of the things that pops up here with like creators being a huge piece of what we have going on is just that database. So Lauren, I'll throw this one to you to kick us off. It's just, how do you create a strong creator database at the end of the day?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, this is a tough one. And I think it's just because there's a lot of creators out there. And so really fleshing out, you know, who's good, who's bad, working with them, seeing how they do work, how they operate. I mean, I work with a lot of different, and I think you kind of start to find the ones that just get it. They can look at a brief, they can understand it, they understand how to talk to consumers, they understand how to take your research and the brief and utilize it in a good content piece. But really, I think kind of once you start to find those strong creators, then literally just take their information and start packing it into an Excel spreadsheet, you know, anything that you can to basically start building up these creator profiles. And then once you have that, then you can really just start to tap into that database. So I think it's just, again, it's a lot of research, it's a lot of testing and just seeing who works and who doesn't.
So important to just be
I'll
able
add
to
something to
have.
that too.
Go ahead, Sarah.
I have a prediction that I'm going to put out that may or may not be correct. I have a hypothesis. I think we're going to start to see, since there's so many UGC creators out there, and so many of them are very, what I would call green actors, I think we're going to start to see more and more brands utilize actual seasoned actors. So there's sites that you can go on and hire actual actors for pretty cheap, $200 to $300, and they will literally do whatever you want them to do, like any kind of acting anywhere for anything, any kind of advertising. These actors, though, are ones who are either trained to do this, like they actually went to school to be actors, or they really want this to be their career. So they're focused on an entirely different product output. I have a prediction that this is kind of where the industry is headed. And this is based upon talking with quite a lot of founders, a ton of different agency owners, and they're all kind of seeing the same thing, that like UGC creators were fantastic for last year for like handling this issue of iOS kind of basically tore apart our entire system. How do we fix it? UGC was the bridge, right? But now what we're finding is we know UGC works. Now we just need to produce higher quality UGC. And to find that, we basically have to hire higher quality actors is what we're kind of seeing coming up next. So I think that's probably where the industry is headed next. I would love to hear some feedback from any of the brand founders who have actually tried this. Yeah.
I agree, Sarah. And I'll only say this just because I do have creators that actually work with me. And really at the end of the day, it's like we started out where they weren't necessarily trained. And literally it was me saying, no, do this, shoot this, get this concept, you know what I mean? Like it was a lot of like me working with them and training them. And now it's so easy to just already have those trained actors that I don't have to reach out to those, you know, newer UGC creators. I mean, honestly, I like with so many creators that have reached out to me and want to work with me, it's very hard because I have to say no, because it's like you just don't have the skill that I need in order to get that high quality UGC anymore. Like there are a lot of people out there, but at the end of the day, it's like there's a lot of people out there doesn't mean they're necessarily good. And so I agree with you, Sarah, 100%.
It's definitely a skill, and I think it shows very, very apparently when you get your content back, whether the person is acting and actually good at it, or if it's organic, 100% organic, or if it's some weird spot in between. So really on that.
I'm so curious mainly around like the top of the funnel, right? So when I say the top of the funnel, what I mean for everyone who's like listening in here is like, let's say I'm a brand and I don't know where to get a creator. Like Sarah, you had mentioned potential websites. Lauren, you mentioned people reach out to you, but you started somewhere for sure. So I almost wonder if we can give the people insight into like how to even make those right connections and what are we looking for? Does that make sense?
You can jump in.
Okay.
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead,
no,
Nicole. Kick
go
us
ahead,
off. Yeah,
Sarah.
kick us off.
Nicole.
Sorry.
Kick us
Yeah.
off. Kick us off.
Okay, so I started in that position where I worked with a lot of bootstrap brands years ago, and it was just 5 years ago. There wasn't, the Billo or the Incense, which are platforms, not affiliate, but that you can go and hire UGC talent, and there's different degrees of their quality and talent. But before all that, like I had to post ads on Craigslist and Fiverr and ask the local community and people on the web, hey, can you shoot this content for me? And oftentimes it was easiest to actually emulate and do it myself and show them I want basically this and send over my bullet pointed script. And that's worked pretty well back in the day. There's definitely a lot more efficient methods, such as the platforms I mentioned, or having your own database of UGC creators. But most recently, actually, Meta just launched a platform for creators on their backend. I'm not sure if it's fully released to everyone. I know it got released to brands within the US only, but basically it's kind of like an integrated Grin UGC creator platform where, because they've got the data on everyone on Instagram and Facebook. So you can go in as a creator, make your little profile, match with different brands based on your engagement levels and get paid right all within Facebook's backend. So very interesting to see that new development in the last few weeks here in how Meta is trying to compete against these other creator platforms. So be very cool to see how this plays out.
Yeah, I actually, when I first started, to be honest, I stalked a lot of social media managers. I mean, people who already do social media, I feel like already kind of get it, and they're already having to like produce that content for a lot of their brands anyway. And so I actually I did a lot of stalking on them, and they were great to kind of start with because again, like some of them are kind of wanting to transition more into this UGC role, and they were more willing to like work with me and more willing to be worked with and worked on, as opposed to going out and vetting all these, quote unquote UGC creators. Like it was just easier to work with them and easier to find them because they're more readily available, I guess, and they already understand how to market to social media and how to market a brand, that they're just easier to work with, I think. So I think if you're kind of starting out, that's a good place to kind of reach out to.
Perfect. And then Sarah, you were mentioning one of those websites specifically for like people who are trained, and I don't know if I'm putting words into your mouth, but are there any of those that come to mind for you?
I've tested a couple different ones. Honestly, I haven't like pinpointed one that I use all the time. So I don't remember any off the top of my head, but I do know that there's quite a few from people who are just like really interested in acting and just want to try and make it their career. So they're on the cheaper end, which I think is fantastic because man, UGC gets expensive. Like it's really high production value, like cost wise. So the cheaper you can get it, I think the better. And if you find someone that you really, really love, please, please, please treat them well, pay them what they're worth. Obviously don't overpay these people because we're trying to like manage the flow. At this point, there's so many UGC creators out there and all of them are just kind of confused about what they should charge. So pay them well, treat them well. And I mean, you could work for people for years. There's some really good people out there that you can work with for a long, long time if they're good. So yeah.
Love that. Love that. And then on the topic of UGC right now, like the number one voted question that we have here is that it's hard to build a brand image when focusing so heavily on UGC. How do you balance the UGC style with more branded and produced content across your different channels? Nicole, do you want to kick us off on that one?
Sure. Yeah. UGC is just a style. It's just having that supposedly authentic person giving their content, and usually a selfie style from a phone is pretty traditional for UGC. Graphics, man, people forgot that graphics and statics work, and this is one of the easiest plays. There's so many variations, but even just a review style graphic, you can do problem, solution focused. There's so many angles that you can play into a graphic that immediately will just expand, and you can keep it very branded too by having on brand colors, using your brand fonts and brand logo. You can take almost any static angle and polish it up, make it look branded and on point. UGC is a little bit harder unless you start adding post-production video edits such as like your copy cards at the end and keeping your logo, and even font styles. It's maybe mashing up the two.
And then Lauren, would love to know your thoughts since you live in this every single day.
Yeah, I actually, it's funny because like, don't build your brand image on UGC like that. That's like really like, it's one of those things like, don't heavily focus on it. I mean, yes, it's great to have, but I say this all the time to anyone that I work with or anyone that I talk to, like you have to diversify your creatives. You cannot build a solid structure on just UGC alone. Like it just doesn't work. Like you have to make sure that you're still adding in those statics, those, simple elements of, creative. It's just, you can't build it on just UGC. Like, I think it's so funny when I have clients come to me and they're like, well, we only have UGC, and it's, then you're doing it wrong. Like, I mean, really, at the end of the day, it's like, you have to have the simple things. You still have to have statics. You still have to have carousels. Like, you still have to have those simple things that are going to pop out in people's feed. So I would just say, make sure you're just building all creatives for all parts of the funnel, really.
And I know there's another question on here, but it's like, people are in love with videos right now. Why do you think that is?
I mean, video, I mean, I'll just give my opinion. I mean, honestly, I think video, because it's just always in your face. Like there's always something to entertain you. There's no, like with TikTok and shorts and YouTube and everything, it's like the generation now is just fully focused on video. It's very rare. Like, I mean, I'm a lot older than much people, but I mean, really, like at the end, like we had print, like we had magazines, that was our thing. And now it's just constant, like video is always in your face. So I think that's why people are so much more drawn to it. But there's video in the sense of UGC, and there's video in the sense of an animated static. So it's like, there's still different parts of video that you can have. It doesn't always necessarily have to be UGC. I think a lot of people's misconception is that they think video and they automatically think UGC, but like, that's not really the case. Like you can make something animated and still have it be a video. Sorry.
I love that.
I'm off my soapbox.
The passion is what drives this. The passion is what drives this. So I love it. I love it. And then there's another question here that Sarah, I'd like to direct to you. You and I have chatted about this a bunch, but I'd love for everyone else to be in the loop here. It's like, how do you better control outcomes when making UGC, specifically with outside talent? How do you make sure that if it's in-house, doesn't feel forced or inauthentic, for example? So how do you go about that process with your avatars?
This is such a good question. And it also leans into the fact that like, as a brand and as creative strategists, we completely understand that for some brands, UGC is all that's working right now. So like, I'd love to bring that out because I'm sure somebody on this call is thinking, well, UGC is all that's working in my account. Like, how am I supposed to have a good split when no static is working or none of my gifts are working? Like, we totally understand that for some accounts, Facebook just algorithms you into UGC. So I understand that that's a thing. When it comes to producing good UGC and actually getting something that's authentic, I think it's important to have a good creative stack on both sides. Continue testing all of your statics so that you can check messaging in your static and pull it into your UGC, if that makes sense. We need to use statics because they're quick, right? Real fast. Like let's produce 10 of them and test messaging with the statics. Once we find one that hits, then we're going to pull that and build it out into a very well-structured, direct response, paid advertising focused UGC. UGC is, because it's much more like high production value, like it just takes a lot more time to produce it. We need to make sure that when we produce it, we're producing it off of an idea that we know is going to work. So one, it comes down to actually sourcing somebody that's a very good actor. We've already talked about this, so we don't need to like beat that one again. But the other side of it is understanding that your particular UGC creator is actually not playing the part of somebody who's actually advertising the brand or like promoting the brand. They're playing a character. So, and I'm sure if you've heard me on Twitter before, you've heard me say this before, but what I would rather us do is actually create a brief off of a character and not actually set down lines of like, this is what I want you to say. So we need to think of ourselves as we are the director. We are not the screenwriter. You're not the person who's actually writing the lines. You want them to write their own lines. And we do this in particular from like a psychology standpoint, because we don't want our voice to come through a different human. Nobody is going to say things the exact same way that another person does. So I could write a script for Lauren and have her say it, and it may come out real strange because she uses different language than I do. She uses different like phrases, you know, and I'm also obviously talk with my hands a lot. Like if I'm on camera and I do this all the time, it makes sense for Sarah. But it's possible that maybe it doesn't make sense for Lauren. I think it does because Lauren, I'm pretty sure you're Italian, but if not, you and I use our hands a lot. It's fine. So this is just the way that we talk, but for somebody else, it may not be. So when you're writing your actual briefs and scripts, make sure that you're not having them do it line by line by line. Start with a character summary. So I always still at the top and say, I want you to play the character of a mom who's really busy, really tired, doesn't have time to wash her hair, and has a really difficult time with getting out the door within 20 minutes. Maybe we're like promoting a shampoo or whatever it is. That's the character, right? You're a tired mom. That's your character. The next summary is going to be down into the nitty gritty of like, this is how the product solves that problem. Our particular shampoo works within 20 minutes. Your hair will dry faster. It'll be beautiful out the door. And you won't have to worry about like actually styling it because all you have to do is let it air dry. It'll be fine, right? That's what it solves. Then go into, here's some suggested actual copy that you can use if you like. And please rephrase so that it makes sense to you. I always put, this is suggested. It is not something I want you to actually say. Please rephrase it into however it works for you as a UGC creator. Because at the end of the day, we're trying to get natural. We want it to come across as if they're just opening up their phone, turning it around and starting to talk to their friends. If you want it to be natural, do not script it. That's my suggestion.
So good.
Yeah,
It's funny because
I actually think, oh, sorry. I was just
No,
going to
go
say,
ahead,
I think it's hard for brand owners, I think, and people on that side to understand that too, because they want to get their point across so fast and they want to make sure that people are understanding what the product is. And so they don't think about, again, like bringing it back to the human side, like they don't think about the busy mom who's running out the door who like doesn't have time to wash her hair, you know, like they're just thinking about, I want to tell you about all these, you know, it doesn't have this in it and this in it. And it's like, at the end of the day, like you have to talk to that person and not necessarily, you know, share, like get so nitty gritty, I guess. So just making sure that you're just understanding the people element again.
Yeah. One of the best ads I ever saw was actually a Black Friday ad from last year. And I knew the guy that ran the ad. It was the same person talking to herself, which was the funniest thing. It's a puffy jacket that's heated. So all you have to do is like push a button and the whole jacket will warm up. And it was a conversation between her in her normal jacket and her in the puffy jacket. And the puffy jacket was just saying, you look cold. And she was like, yeah, it's freezing out here. Like, I'm dying right now. How are you not cold? She was like, I have a puffy jacket that heats. And that was the whole ad. It was literally like one person talking to herself on either side of her like problem and solution. And he's running the same ad. I just got it on my phone like yesterday. I was like, you're running the same ad again this year. And he was like, this crushed, just crushed. But it was great because it was so natural. You could tell this person probably thought of this concept herself and just like randomly shot it on a whim. And it just, even for Black Friday, it did so well because it was natural to her. It was natural to the actress. So like as natural as you can get it and as free form as you can get it is best way to go.
I love it. I love it. We're coming up on 10 minutes here and there are questions that are getting upvoted. I do want to give some, like our media buyers some love too. We focus heavily on UGC, which is a huge topic, of course, but I do want to give some love. So the first question that I wanted to dig into here is this one right here. So as a creative strategist, are you proposing the test for media buyers or are they proposing tests to you? And then Nicole, you know I'm throwing this one at you.
Yeah, it's a blend. You're collaborating with the media buyer. You don't want to come in and run their show. They've been in the account much longer than you typically. And they're very hyper-focused day to day in the account. So oftentimes I'm not coming in and telling you, you need to run it this way, What I like to do is set them up for success. I like to say that, you know, these are the creatives that we have that we'd like to test. These are the key goals for these creatives is to test the hook, or the key goal is to test, you know, the click-through rate. And these are the benchmarks that we're trying to beat or establish, you know, in the account. So when I give that information to the media buyer, it is a back and forth kind of conversation. And then we work together on how to best build it out. So there's not kind of a one size fits all in terms of how to test it creatively, because it's going to vary, you know, whether you're doing top of funnel traffic or bottom of funnel traffic, it's completely different and your goals are very different. So again, it comes back to that alignment with the media buyer, making sure you're on the same page. This is what we're testing. This is why. And this is my suggestions and best practices, but at the end of the day, I'm going to leave it to you. And I trust your judgment. And that's really key because you can't do it all. I can't go in and run the show. So I really got to lean on the media buyer sometimes.
And then with that media buying hat on, let's say we get to the place of like the test is ready to go. We have those assets. We know we're going to go live. What's your preferred way of like setting up the account to run that test?
I hate to say it, but it's going to vary test by test. It's going to vary completely different. In general, I see a big shift towards the less buttons you have to press, the better. So switching from ABO to CBO, putting less emphasis on the targeting and the interest, and stop breaking it out by different segments. Let the algorithm do its job. Let it work. Oftentimes we're seeing that succeed. Now the difference, I would say, when you're at much smaller scale, that's when I'm seeing like the lookalike audiences still can sometimes outperform broad. But in general, I say if I had a blanket statement, which I hate doing, but I would say broad is probably going to be your best foot forward, especially because it allows you room to scale and it's more consistent, it's more stabilized. You go heavy into like your 1% lookalike audience, that might be great at $100 budget. But when you try to scale it up to $1,000 budget, it usually tanks. It just goes kapoof. So I see that frustration across media buyers and testing. So for creatives in general, again, broad is probably the way you want to go.
And do you have any thoughts on like structure being testing campaign versus scaling campaign versus like evergreen campaign, for example?
Yeah, absolutely. I love to keep my creative tests, in particular the isolated variables that I'm testing, in a completely separate campaign. I like to do this for a few reasons. Organizational purposes, it's much easier to go back and see what we're testing and why. If it's working, I like to then move it into a scaling campaign. Then we try to squeeze it out. We may switch from automatic bidding structures to more cost caps to squeeze out, the remaining juice out of that, really maximize the media buys. But I also like to isolate it because you want to have a dedicated creative testing budget. And a lot of brands aren't doing this. So they simply testing it, but they don't have a dedicated budget to creative testing. We really need to isolate that factor and ensure that we're doing it. In general, kind of a loose rule of thumbs, I like to have about 60% of my ad account be focused on proven content that's winning, because of course we got to stay profitable for most part. About 30% is like iterations and tweaks of the profitable content, or ideas that we know are pretty confident that are going to succeed. And maybe it's based off the NLP report or something. That's probably in that 30% iterations. And then 10% big swings. We have no idea if this is going to work, but you have to throw those ideas out on the wall. You have to be creative with it. You want to make sure that you allocate budget to those big swings, because you might hit a grand slam and off you go to the races. So I still recommend having a little bit of budget aside for those as well.
I love that. And then Sarah and Lauren, where I'd love to get your opinion on, this is a question in here about repurposing content. What's the correct flow for it? Like, is it best to test it on organic first, then social, then paid? Or what does that process start to look like? Sarah, maybe I can throw it at you first.
Yeah. So when we're testing any sort of creatives, I honestly like to take a little bit of what's worked off of organic. It's difficult to kind of translate organic to paid though, because oftentimes we will run an organic thinking that it'll do really, really well on paid because it did so well organically, but because it's not framed to sell, sometimes it'll completely flop. So organic's a little bit a difficult one. You have to have a very specific organic, an organic that's like a little bit of paid, which is like weird to say. I don't know how you would frame that, but like in the middle somewhere. One of the best things that I've noticed though is taking concepts from organic that seems to be working, specifically trends. So when we're doing any sort of iterations, pulling from organic and using them in paid, we're usually using platform trends and not necessarily a specific organic post. But Lauren probably has kind of a deeper analysis than I do because she does the actual production side. But I don't know. What do you think, Lauren?
No, I mean, I agree. Like it's hard because again, like Sarah said, like you're going from an organic side where again, you're not selling anything. You're just doing an organic post. And so again, for us, we just usually look at trends. Like that usually seems to be the best way to kind of sell an organic type of material is just by a trend.
Makes a ton of sense. And then we probably have time for one or two more depending, but the one that got upvoted super quickly here is diving into the first, I want to say 3 buckets and just almost putting some definitions beside them. So anybody can take this. I know all of you excel here, but just the alignment, avatars, and I think it was research. Yeah, alignment, research, and avatar steps, just putting some definitions around what each of these buckets mean.
Nicole, do you want to take alignment because you're super good at this one?
Oh, alignment, my favorite. This is the bread and butter, man. You really have to start here because there's so many variables. You mentioned actually evergreen versus like promotional content. What's the goal of this whole creative strategy, right? And then you've got like the more branded brands and the performance. So alignment is where I'm literally sitting down with the brand or the team and being like, what is our goal? How are we trying to execute it? What variables are at play? And then is the brand as a whole, do we tilt more brand oriented where we're focused on brand elements would be such as staying on brand fonts, on brand colors, despite the fact that sometimes it's not the best choice for performance. For example, Meta, we all know, is very blue background. If your brand is all blue colors, you're going to blend into the background. This is just psychology 101, color theory. So bright colors such as oranges, red tones are going to pop and increase performance. We know this across the board. Now, where does your brand align? Are you willing to sacrifice some brand qualities to have more performance? Or are we going to stay in our lane? So understanding those almost like, I call it like the bowling lane, like where your gutters are, where we have to stay in between to make sure that we're all aligned. That comes together, of course, at the ad level. So very key. That's a little bit more color to alignment, hopefully.
Yeah, that kind of leans into like the research part really well, because once we know where the brand wants to go, then we can actually take time and do the research based upon, okay, they're more brand focused, this particular brand. So we know that we need to stay a little bit on target when it comes to the actual display, like the actual, I don't know, personification of the brand itself. So we will go into the research and actually do a deep dive, not just into what the consumers want from the NLP standpoint, but also what are your competitors saying, right? And what are they putting out messaging wise that we can actually use to our benefit? What is the industry doing? What trends are happening on Google? What trends are happening on Pinterest? The research is really just telling us where the environment sits, right? Alignment really is what planet do you want to build? Research is what universe do you live in, which helps a little bit because you have to know what's the reality of what we have to work with. Because oftentimes I notice that the brands will go into research with an idealistic standpoint of this is what we want to put out there. We want this message of like inclusiveness and a community, and this is what we want our people to notice about us. And we'll come back and say, well, unfortunately, your customers really want individualism. They don't want to be a part of a community. And that's based upon all this data. So it's good to have alignment so you know what you're building. Research is how you figure out what's actually reality, what's the actual environment you're living in. Sorry, go ahead, Nicole.
I was just going to add one quick thing. Or they want that inclusivity, but then when you go run that ad and it tanks, they're like, oh, cut it. So
yes, that happens a lot.
Whose fault is it? At the end of the day, it always comes back to the media buyer, like, oh, performance, but that doesn't align. We just talked about how we want to build more traffic to our website and grow this community. You have 2 polar opposite goals. So it's very important to get on the same page and not blame the media buyer.
Lauren, do you want to do avatars?
Or
I know you.
I was going to say, and the creative too, Nicole. I mean, honestly, it's always the media buyer and the creators that it's like you both hand in hand together, like mess it up. So I feel you on that side. I mean, yeah. And then obviously, like, again, alignment research, basically that's what's going to build your avatars. That's what is going to build the people that you're talking about messaging to, essentially taking all of this information and building out who these people are that are going to be who you're talking to. I mean, really that's kind of how it is.
Yeah, I'll add to avatars is not just demographic information. Demographics cool, middle-aged woman, 55, whatever, but it's the psychographic information. Like, what are their goals? What are their core values? What triggers them to purchase? That's what we want from avatars. So oftentimes we're like, oh, we did our avatar research, and I get back this little doc and I'm like, that's not going to help. That's not our ads don't convey any emotion.
Yeah,
it's emotion. I would say emotion is the biggest one. For sure.
Yep.
Oh, I love that. I love that. I think that's the perfect ending, literally on that piece, just talking about how to build those avatars out. No, I love the approach. Like alignment anchors you, right? You can always come back to that. That's where we've literally aligned on the planet and what success looks like on that planet. So with that being said, let me stop sharing my screen. I want to give you all your flowers. You three are absolutely incredible. Thank you so much for your time. I really,
you.
really appreciate it. And I know everyone here really appreciates it. Everybody who's here as well, thank you so much for attending. I hope this is helpful, especially coming up for Black Friday, Cyber Monday, and as we plan out the new year. I'll be sending this recording out, and be sure to hit these three on Twitter. Like for sure, give them a follow, see what they're up to. If you're looking for like advice when it comes to creative strategy, not only does, well, Nicole has the BFCM stuff, but Lauren and Sarah are dropping a course. So there's a lot of things happening. Just come check them out. And it's been absolutely incredible. Thank you, everybody, so much.
Evan.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, everybody. We'll talk to you real soon.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye, everybody. Bye-bye.